So sometimes you have to do maintenance on your own vehicles. Today I was changing the clutch. I had a long weekend. I'm D in this D-mon's garage.
So how do you know when it's time to do a clutch job?
Generally they'll start slipping when you're accelerating, either accelerating hard in lower gears or at really high RPMs accelerating. You'll notice that there's a definite difference between the actual engagement. You'll feel it start to slip.
Okay. And what if I didn't drive that vehicle very often, or it was a vehicle I was just getting to test? Is there a way to know?
Now you'll definitely feel it because the RPMs will go up faster than in proportional. You know, you'll hear the engine spin up really quick, and it won't accelerate the vehicle as fast.
How hard is it to change a clutch?
Varies on the vehicle. Since this is 4-wheel drive, it's not too bad, and it's an older truck, so for the most part, I'm able to just pull the drive shafts, pull the center console, pull the shifter, unbolt everything, and just kind of slide it back. It'd also be easier if I wasn't doing it on my back in the driveway, but you know.
It's hard to video this. So
yeah, that's it.
Work underneath. What tips would you have for anyone who is doing a clutch change?
Bring a buddy. You know, second person to muscle that transmission around is usually helpful. They don't even have to know much. They have to be willing to get a little dirty and a little scuzzy. But, you know, a lot of times you buy someone one of your buddies a 6-pack of beer, you know, and some pizza. They'll usually come over and hang out.
How long does it take roughly to do a clutch job?
It varies. On the newer stuff, sometimes it takes a lot longer. If it's a rear-wheel drive, it'll take a lot less time than a 4-wheel drive. They're also a lot lighter because you don't have the transfer cases. But it varies from vehicle to vehicle, how much room you have to maneuver. This is an older truck, so the bell housing and the trans tunnel is a lot bigger. So I was able to slide it back without dropping the cross member and everything else. I did have to finagle it and jockey it, but.
And that's if you don't have problems.
Yeah, that's if you don't have problems. On a front-wheel drive car, a lot of times it's a very big project.
I know you wanted to budget a couple days just in case. So let's do this clutch.
So this is actually the clutch plate. If you look, there's little lines in it. That's generally, when you have them out or going to put them in, if those lines aren't there, it's a really good indication that the thing is just about worn out.
So the scuzzy marks and all of the lines, that's from use?
Yeah. Well, the lines aren't there from use. The lines are to tell how much material is left usually.
Okay.
Because when they get down to that point, you'll start get down to the rivet levels. So, and that's usually it's completely worn out. I probably could have got away with doing another clutch adjustment on this one.
You got a chip on the outside over here. Yes.
Oh, right there.
Yep.
Yeah, that might have been. That's minor. That might have even happened when I was taking it down or putting it in the first time, or who knows? Yeah.
The outer edge isn't any worse than
no.
further in. And how long does the clutch usually last?
Depends on the driver. I have a really bad problem because this truck has a fair amount of output and it's geared really, really low. That sometimes if I don't slip the clutch, it'll jerk the truck and everything else.
Is there anything else on that wears?
No, that's all it is. It's that clutch material there.
But when you
and it's kind of like brakes.
Clutch, it also came with the outer shell piece.
Yeah, this is the actual pressure plate.
Okay.
So this is what creates the clamping. So basically, if you think about it like brakes, this would be your wheel cylinder.
Okay.
And then the actual clutch disc is kind of like the brake pads.
And now I see you got black marks there. Is that oil and dirt? Or
some of this, a little bit of this is probably oil. Some of it's actually heat marks. The springs do go bad in these, which is usually why you replace them, because you're already there. Sometimes, depending on how often you're in there, you can go in and just change the clutch plate. This one's actually pretty strong. I'll keep this one on the side in case, for whatever reason, I end up needing one. And it's a standard size for Chevy.
And you said you could adjust the clutch. So what are you actually adjusting?
This is the shifter fork. The throwout bearing goes here.
Okay.
Right? And when you step on the clutch, there's a pivot. On this one, because it's a manual clutch, right, there's no hydraulics. It's all linkages and stuff. So when you push this in, when you push your pedal in, what it's doing is pushing this forward, which causes the pressure plates to release.
Okay.
Okay. So if you look here, there's a threaded rod here. And yes, I know it is hammered beyond belief, but you know. the truck's got some miles on it. By changing where this is, we'll change where this.
So is that something I'd have to replace every now and then too?
Nope. The only thing you'd have to replace is that.
Okay, and what's that actually called?
It's the adjuster nut or the pivot nut.
Okay.
And that's all it is. It's from the wear. Generally, you never have to replace one of those unless, you know, the truck's got a lot of miles on it.
But I mean, this isn't, you know,
Yeah.
the 80s were a while ago,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if just time wore those out as well.
No, it's literally from there not being enough grease. There's supposed to be probably a little plastic bushing in there that it rides on. Well, the plastic bushings give out over time and they don't get replaced. Now you have metal on metal if they don't stay greased.
So you're going to change both the outer casing and the...
Yeah, I'm going to change the clutch disc and the pressure plate. I'll also change the throwout bearing and the pilot bearing.
Is that just because while you're in there it's easier
That's
to do
it.
it right then?
It was in the kit. The pilot bearing, okay, so this would be the pilot bearing.
Okay.
Right, and this goes into the back of the crankshaft because it's a standard. Well, this is the alignment tool. So this fits in there like this. The transmission does the same thing. And
Plastic?
yeah, this is plastic. It's literally just to align the clutch to the pilot bearing. So when you go to put the transmission in, you're not fighting with it. It's in the right spot. So on the transmission, this doesn't move in and out. It just stays there and it rides on that bearing, because when you're pushing your clutch and you're rolling forward, this thing can turn, or if you push in the clutch and the engine's turning, that's why it doesn't move. The clutch basically connects those two pieces together. And what this is, and this comes with most of the kits, all it does is it just lines the clutch. So when you bolt everything together, you pull this out, and then everything, when you go to put the transmission in, all the clutch fingers and everything else, for the most part, are aligned. Because they're splined, yeah, you kind of have to change. You have to turn the transmission. Usually, the best thing to do.
Now we can see it.
Yeah. So when you go to put it in, sometimes they'll go in, and then this will hit the clutch, and because the input shaft on the transmission isn't set exactly the same, what you do is you put it into first gear, and you just turn one of the shafts.
Okay.
Usually the rear, because then it's always connected.
And this is again where it's nice to have another person because they can sit in the vehicle for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and what it is you usually create a little bit of forward pressure as you turn it, and what it'll do is it'll turn that thing nice and slow, and then once it aligns, it'll go boop, and then you can jockey it in the rest of the way.
So at least you know right when it's
Yeah,
aligned.
yeah. If you have a problem where the transmission and the motor is going back together, don't just put bolts in there and start cranking it together, because you're going to have a problem. You're going to break something, or, you know, even if you haven't had the two pieces together ever before and you're doing a fresh build, don't do that. Go back, figure out why it's not sliding back together. If it did come apart and it didn't have that problem, there's obvious a reason that you're now having to put that much force to push it together. On an automatic transmission, they're at a 1-to-1 ratio, so it's just got a bushing.
Is there anything else while you were in there that you would want to check or just replace?
Truthfully, depending on how bad your clutch is, you want to check your pressure plate. You should have it machined. Make sure it's flat and smooth. I'm not going to do that. I know it's clean. I checked it. It's straight.
What would you use to check it?
I just use a straight edge. And just put a straight edge across it and make sure there's no high spots or no wrinkles. The other thing is you could put a dial gauge on it and turn it, and then see if there was any deviations. You could check the rear main seal, because you're already right there. If you pull the pressure plate off, or you take the flywheel off, you could check the rear main seal and make sure that's not leaking. If it's one of the newer small blocks, it'll have a one-piece main seal. To change it then is not a big thing. If it's the two-piece, depending on the truck, it can become a real issue.
I was just thinking, it's already taking you a while to get this far apart, you know.
If it was an LS, to pop the old one out and put a new one in, you're right there. And some of them are like that. Some of them you can literally just take a screwdriver or a sealer popper and, you know, just pop it out and then just take and tap the new one in, because you're already there.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, that's it. If you're tearing stuff apart to a certain point, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like an engine rebuild.
Yeah, so here's a tip. Sometimes you can't get these pilot bushings out. Either you don't have the right tool or you just can't get them out. What you can do is you take your grease gun, push it in through here, fill this full, as much grease as you can, and then get a bolt. Cut the threads off that are just the same size as that, and if you hammer that in, it'll force this out. Now why don't you get out in the garage and do something?